Hi, Dolores. And hey, all you savvy scientists and rad researchers. Welcome to MiceTech Talk with the technical information scientists of the Jackson Laboratory. My name is Dr. Caitlin, and I'm coming to you from my office in Vacation Land, also known as the state of Maine.
And I'm Dr. Dolores, coming to you from my house in sunny California. Our job as technical information scientists, or TIS, is to serve the research community by answering all math-related questions. You may recognize us from our webinars on Thursdays, and you may have called us last minute on a Friday. You know who you are.
MiceTech Talk is a weekly 15-minute podcast-style webinar where we answer frequently asked mouse-related questions. And we decided to develop this show with a desire to build community amongst our fellow nerd scientists that were sheltering at home.
So hopefully you've got your cup of coffee and you put your feet up, because this is time for MiceTech Talk. We only have 15 minutes, as Caitlin alluded, just enough time for you to finish your coffee. So today, let's talk mouse transmission of COVID-19.
So the motivation for us talking about this topic today was in response to a lot of the phone calls and emails from scientists like you. Many research teams have been concerned that laboratory mice could transmit the COVID-19 disease. This virus infects a number of pets and other animals after close contact with infected people. So today we're going to talk about, is COVID-19 efficient in infecting mice? And can mice carry the virus on their skin or fur? So today we're going to chat about what we know and what steps you can take to keep you and your mice safe.
Okay, so we have planned some fun poll questions for you throughout the show, and we would love it if you could participate. I'm opening here the first poll, so let me get that going. And for you to participate, you need to select the questions that are pertinent to you. For those that are listening to this show later, the question is, what are you most excited about as COVID-19 restrictions are starting to be lifted? Are you excited about eating inside of a restaurant, talking to someone, some person other than your partner, your spouse, children, or pets? Are you excited about shopping for non-essential items? Are you getting a haircut? So make sure that you click submit in order for us to see the results. So I'm going to give it a second, and I will show you the results. Keep in mind that your responses will be anonymous. So I am closing the poll now, and let's take a look at the results. I hope that you can see them there.
Yes. Oh, wow. We actually have a lot of people excited about talking to someone other than who they're living with.
I can relate.
I personally would have said shopping for non-essential items, but that's just me.
Excellent.
Okay, so now that we've practiced, let's move on to our real poll question so we can get an understanding of where you guys are right now and how we can sort of adapt our time here. So Dolores, can you pull out that next poll question?
Yes, it's going.
Okay, so it looks like the question is, are you planning to work with HACE2 mice? And the answers are yes, we are planning to infect them with SARS-CoV-2, or yes, but we are not planning on infecting the mice with SARS-CoV-2, or no plans of working with these mice at this time.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and see what types of results we got. Excellent. So I see that the majority of our listeners today, they don't have currently any plans to intentionally infect mice with COVID-2, but perhaps you are here because you're still worried or you still have questions about what about working with coronavirus in the environment, as we are all exposed to that. So today we will discuss interesting topics such as, if the virus is lethal to regular mice, if they can transmit it to staff working with them. And so keep in mind that you can use the Q&A section that you see to the right of your screen to post questions, and we'll be happy to answer them towards the end of the show and capitalize on that while you have us here.
So let's go ahead and get into some of the questions that we wanted to discuss today. And the first one is if a mouse is infected with SARS-CoV-2, what symptoms might they have? And this seems like a really important thing for researchers to know about.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I've been reading a couple of papers that were published very recently using the current version of coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2. And the symptoms that they describe, keep in mind that these papers are using transgenic mice to infect the mice. And we'll talk about in a little bit what's the difference there. But the symptoms that they described are the infection beginning in the airway epithelia and then subsequently going to the alveoli, involving the lungs. And then the early clinical signs are ruffled fur, which is a generic, sign that the mouse is not doing well. Weight loss, that is another generic clinical sign that the mouse is not doing well. Weight loss can go anywhere from 20 to 40%. Respiratory distress, they report. In addition to that, they are reporting interstitial pneumonia. That's when the alveoli become inflamed, preventing their expansion and their functionality, exchanging CO2 and O2. And then also they report seeing accumulation of inflammatory T cells and macrophages and neutrophils that impact the lung function as well. The damaged lungs can get swollen and enlarged, and then in some cases, not in all the animals, in some cases the virus can spread to the brain. And in those cases, that is more lethal, and you can also see neurological signs. And let me add to that when mouse models were used for the previous epidemic back in 2003 with a similar coronavirus than the one that we are seeing now, they used to report very similar symptoms. In addition to that, the upregulation of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which is work that I have not seen yet with this current coronavirus, but I'm sure people are looking into that as well.
And so that really brings up the next question that I wanted to ask and that we hear sometimes is, can I get COVID-19 from laboratory mice? And can I get COVID-19 from my transgenic HACE2 mice? So let's focus first on just the laboratory mice in general.
Okay. So yeah, we are getting those questions from researchers that are a little bit nervous about working with mice because, as you mentioned, there are some pets that are reported to have them. So I've been asking around, and what I have found is that there is no evidence to this point that infected mice pass the virus to humans. Keep in mind that people that are working with COVID-2 at this point, they do it in BSL-3 labs, which are very restrictive, and they require heavy-duty PPE and protocols in place and all of that. So you wouldn't be getting the mice in those settings if you're doing things right. Work that was done with the previous epidemic back in after 2003 that have used inbred mice and see if they would be good models for studying infectivity of coronavirus. And what they found is that black 6, C57 black 6, bulb C mice, 129s, they do not get infected. So they inoculate the virus in the airways, and the virus does not replicate, and you cannot culture it from the lungs. So by no means the virus is lethal to non-transgenic mice, is what I've seen again and again in reports. So basically, if the strain is not expressing the human ACE2 receptor, it seems like there is no active infection in most of the papers, is what they report. And then, there's recent papers. There's one paper that was published last month in May in Nature that uses the transgenic ACE2 mice to study the current COVID-2 virus. And of course, with a good designed experiment, they are using also non-transgenic mice as controls. So what they show is that the non-transgenic mice show no viral replication by measuring by RT-PCR, and they try to culture the virus from the lungs post-infection, and the controls don't show anything either. So that brings me to the second part of your question, Caitlin. Is it possible to get COVID-19 from transgenic mice expressing human ACE2?
So this answer really has two parts, yes and no. So yes, technically speaking, you could become infected from these mice, but at the same time, the answer is no, because you should be following your BSL-3 guidelines, meaning that you're not having any physical contact with these mice, so you have your proper PPE on, and there's also no respiratory exchange, so you've got your mask on, and so you are completely safe at that point.
Okay. Excellent. So what can we do? We have a question coming in. What can we do to keep people safe at facilities, both humans and mice? What do you think are best practices?
Sure. So I think first and foremost, it's important to follow your state and local guidance regarding continuing operations at your facility. Based on the limited information that we have at this time, the risk of animals actually spreading the virus that causes COVID-19 to people is considered to be very, very low. COVID is primarily spread from person to person, and so really focusing on some steps to reduce the risks for people in your facility. So first being encouraging your employees, your vets, and other staff or students to stay at home if they're sick. You can also consider conducting daily health checks, such as temperature screenings. Most people already limit the number of people in their facility. One other really important thing that we might not think about is that we spend all this time in animal rooms with PPE and our masks on, but when we come out of the animal rooms, it's also really important for us to continue wearing at least cloth face coverings.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And the other thing is, so basically, if you use PPE and you have strict protocols in place, like in JACs, you wouldn't get COVID-19 from lab mice. One thing that we have done, but it's from decades, is we do a really good job, cleaning our rooms, all the surfaces, all the equipment, sterilizing everything. And in addition to that, for example, our personnel, they don't use their street clothes to go to the mouse rooms. They peel them off, they change into sterilized PPE, including socks and shoes, and then they use masks, they use caps, and if they are working on maximum barrier rooms, on top of that, they use N95 respirators, a hoodie, a face shield, a frock, and on top of that, before going into the mouse room, they go through an air shower. I mean, we do understand that not every facility has this advantage, but we do really take good care not only of the staff, but also preventing infections to get into our mice as well. So that brings to another very interesting question, which is it possible that mice pass SARS-CoV-2 on their skin and fur?
So we know that certain bacteria and fungi can be carried on fur and hair, but so far there's no evidence that viruses, including the one that causes COVID-19, can spread from people spread to people from the skin, fur, and hair of pets or laboratory animals. But because these animals can sometimes carry other germs, It's always a good idea to practice healthy habits through washing your hands before and after interacting with them. Let's see. I want to get to one question that we got from our audience. I know we're running short on time, but I think this one is really important, especially for people who are receiving mice at this time. And I know, Dolores, you've been looking into this a lot. So what are the precautions that we take when shipping our transgenic HACE2 mice?
Yes. So first of all, that is the strain that expresses the human version of the ACE2 receptor, which is the entry port of the virus into the cell. So these mice are definitely prone to infection. That's why they are bought to do infectivity studies. And so we have put a caution in the strain data sheet explaining, I'm not going to read it all, but saying that you definitely need to use PPE for handling of these mice. You need to follow CDC and the WHO guidelines to prevent infections into humans. The other thing that it's important to know is the boxing containers, the shipping containers that we use, that way before the COVID-19 pandemic, we selected very specifically the type of containers that have filters that on one hand allow the airflow, but minimizing the penetrability of microorganisms. So the idea, we ship in these types of boxes severely immune deficient mice all over the world, and they do fine. So that's kind of the precautions that we see here. I just want to take a minute. There is one question from the audience that is asking if the mice infected with CoV-2 have symptoms in the intestine, and I have seen one of the recent papers, I think it's the Nature paper, but I'm not 100% sure. There's two papers from 2020 that have used COVID-2 to infect, and one of them definitely shows infection in the intestine. Using a transgenic humanized ACE2 strain.
All right. So it seems like a major common theme that we have here is really to wear your PPE. So this is just another instance of how important that is. Also, if we didn't have time to get to your questions, or if you think of some questions later, please feel free to email them to us at MiceTech@jax.org, and one of our scientists will get back to you as soon as possible.
Excellent. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. So tune in again to MiceTech next week for Let's Talk Humans Tips. This is Dr. Dolores saying we miss you, and we're looking forward to seeing you next week. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay excited about your research.